AI in particular, just because a product can be built and is economically viable does not mean it is a good choice to build it. You are not obligated to make as much money as possible.
Hilary Mason, co-founder and CEO at Hidden Door, an AI role-playing game platform.
Here's my hot take for founders of AI products. ChatGPT, from a product design perspective, is the original sin of bad AI product design. Chat is not a good product. What it does in that UX is that it pushes the responsibility for making great decisions onto the customer. So a tiny little disclaimer at the bottom that says, oh, it might be lying to you and it might be terrible and it might be damaging is not enough.
How does your mainly synchronous setup look like for your company? Is it like co-working sessions together and Zoom calls?
A lot of startups went like strongly async. We're strongly synchronous. And I think that is a requirement for creative work, or the kind we do that crosses where layers of the product have to be in alignment. We keep a sort of daily, what we call our dilemmas. So demos, dilemmas, and aspirationally donuts. Once in a while, an actual donut appears on somebody's screen. And that's super important for us.
What's one strongly held belief that you have that you think 99% of other founders would disagree with?
I mean, it's probably
Hilary, welcome to Founders and Empanadas. Thanks so much for coming on today.
I'm really excited to be here.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So Brooklyn has a lot of good empanada spots. How does this one compare to other spots you've tried?
So far, pretty good. Basic. I will say I was at a farmer's market this weekend and had a sweet plantain and queso empanada from a Peruvian guy, and that was like incredible. This one is a beef one and good seasoning. Pretty like solid. So thank you.
That Peruvian one sounds awesome, though. I need to check that out next time I'm in town. Well, Hilary, I'm so excited to have you on today. As a big Dungeons and Dragons nerd myself, I'm like really stoked on learning more about your product,
Awesome.
and just I love that experience of being able to role play, but also leveraging AI. So very very compelling product. We'll dive into. Um, and really, the core theme for today will be data science and also the ethics behind it. And no one better to bring on than you. So I'd love to just start things off by, um, you know, taking a step back in your earlier career and maybe talk about how you kind of found the pain points you wanted to solve for, and what drove you towards eventually launching Hidden Door.
Yeah, that's a good question because it's a lot of different things. This is not my first company by far, it's my fourth. And every single piece has built up to this project in the sense that when I was in undergrad, I went to a hippie liberal arts school called Grinnell College in the middle of Iowa and took a ton of creative writing courses as well as doing a computer science major. And that was always because I had, like you, a love for tabletop role playing, for storytelling. I'm a huge reader. Usually it's sci-fi, fantasy, other genre fiction, literature, of course. And then, studied machine learning. I've been working in AI and data science for well over 20 years at this point. And thinking a lot about product experience design. And we have some new data set, some new machine learning capability. Like, what are the ways we can build really interesting products around it and interesting businesses around it? And at the same time, since you brought up ethics, like I have a certain set of values that like generally are not complicated, but I like to build things that make the world more interesting, that help people. And so Hidden Door is really all of those things coming together. It's really realizing that, and we started this company in 2020. So it was a long, long time ago. There was no ChatGPT. Nobody cared about AI. But it was really realizing that the technology had advanced to the point where we could perhaps be able to build the fun dynamics of a tabletop storytelling experience, but digitally. And that's never been possible before. So we set out to try.
Very cool. Yeah, it's when you don't have your dungeon master around, that's certainly a pain point. I want to dive into ethics a bit. I find it really compelling, and especially today with just like Fable getting shut down a couple days ago, and it's very top of mind for a lot of people. But I understand, back in 2018, you wrote, ethics and data science, and centered around 5 C's of consent, clarity, consistency, control, and consequences. Which of those 5 C's do you think is in the worst shape right now in 2026, and why?
Oh my gosh. So I first want to say I had two amazing co-authors on that book, Mike Lukides from O'Reilly Media and DJ Patilla, who was President Obama's chief data scientist. So that lent a lot of the perspective as well. And it's consent. Like I think that there's a lot here. So trying to like sum it up in one hot take is really hard. But the current moment in AI has created a lot of resistance, a lot of rejection. And the reason is not a technical reason. It's not a reason because like it's bad linear algebra or it's like evil linear algebra. The reason is because people's data have been taken without consent and used to train models that are being sold to economically disadvantage them specifically. Um, Without any recourse or even in many cases admitting that this is what's happening. When we wrote those things, we could not have imagined the moment we're in today in 2026. But if I had to pick one issue, it would just be that.
And I'm also curious about just, it's evolved so much since when you wrote this in 2018. Maybe what aspects of your original publishing aren't relevant anymore, or what did you maybe first see and it's become an even bigger problem than back in 2018?
That's a really good question because a lot of the motivation for writing that book was because there was a struggle inside the data science community. And what we were trying to do was give a tool to people who were in companies, who were starting companies, who had to figure out what the right choices were for them and their work that would help them making that choice that in many cases they want to make anyway easier because they have a book that they can put down on someone's desk and be like, hey, these people who supposedly know what they're talking about said like we should consider these factors. So that was where that came from. Um, and it has only become more important now than it was then.
And, for early stage AI founders, just got accepted to YC, for example, what are some things that maybe they should be keeping top of mind when considering ethics with their product build out? Maybe what are some blind sides that you see early stage founders take from an ethics perspective?
So, in AI in particular, just because a product can be built and is economically viable does not mean it is a good choice to build it. You are not obligated to make as much money as possible. I do believe we have an obligation to create things that are clear, that are honest in where their data and resources come from, and then that return value or even more value is created than what is captured economically. And you have to align your business model with your principles because you cannot tack it on later. It will always end up being something that is like, oh, we'll get to that someday. And someday never comes, especially in startups. You always think you have 10 things on your someday list. And for the most part, none of them will ever happen. And that's fine. So just say be very thoughtful about that. And also, and here's my other hot take for founders of AI products. I would say ChatGPT from a product design perspective is the original sin of bad AI product design. Chat is not a good product. And it is up to us to figure out what good is. And what it does in that UX is that it pushes the responsibility for making great decisions onto the customer. So a tiny little disclaimer at the bottom that says, oh, it might be lying to you and it might be terrible and it might be damaging is not enough. That doesn't mean that it works out well in the end. So I would say if you're an AI founder, think about the product experience that is going to be magical, that's going to help people actually solve the problem you are setting out to solve for them, the pain you're setting out to alleviate for them, and is not just going to be another chat agent UI that looks exactly like every single other one that is going to put on them the full responsibility of still managing the work because we know what the outcome of that looks like now. You can't pretend you don't. And it's not great. So do that work, like be creative. And also, I think it will make a much more valuable company because you're going to have customers that are there for your product. You're going to have a community that's there because of your choices and not just because it was cheap tokens.
Totally. Yeah, couldn't agree more. And one of the most compelling products are the experiences actually taking responsibility and ownership of like an actual coworker instead of just the chat experience waiting for the
Yeah,
prompt.
like you should be proud of the things you make, right? Like
Yeah,
not ashamed to talk about them to anyone, even if they disagree. Like do something you're proud of.
absolutely. Other than Hidden Door, what's maybe another AI company that you feel like the product experience really is magical and is really well thought out? Any examples you can share?
Yeah, I mean, I have a whole bunch of things I love, but the trick is that most of the best AI product experiences are actually almost invisible to us. So like at Hidden Door, we are big fans of Linear, the, ticket tracking software. And if I say like at Linear in our Slack, please make a ticket out of this discussion, it summarizes the discussion and puts a good name on the ticket. It is not an AI chat. It is not flashy. It's not like, hey, you used an AI. It's just doing the job clearly with a decent result and it fits into the workflow perfectly. So that's a really easy one.
Yeah, you don't need to log into a fancy UI anymore. You just have a MCP server take care of the action. Very cool.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier of aligning the business model with your core ethics and values, and that you gotta do that from the beginning. Talk me through a little bit more about how, Hidden Door works, and I'm especially curious about, the authors, their input. I understand their cap time is, about 10 hours is all it takes for them, and yeah, walk me through kinda how they entrust their works, with your brand.
Yeah. So, what we do at Hidden Door, our North Star is imagine you can sit around the table with your favorite author and they're going to GM a tabletop, a new story for you, where you get to be a character in that story. You get to control that character and you're really in the world from that book or that movie. Like it really feels like it. Um, but you get to look at corners of that world that maybe didn't get explored in the main storyline, or you get to meet the characters from that world and ask them questions or like sort of go on adventures with them. And our stories can be really action oriented or they can be really relationship or status oriented. So everything from The Crow, violent resurrection based on a graphic novel, all the way over to Pride and Prejudice. We did a Charlie Strauss Saturn's Children. If you're a sci-fi fan, like where all the humans are dead and everyone's, a robot in the future in a like epic space society. Right. And so that's our vision. And then we think about like, how do you do that? Well, one of the challenges of building any AI product right now is that you cannot separate the business model design from the product design from the software machine learning AI design, like all the way down to the data layer and the infrastructure layer. And it is a little hard because everybody has grown up when things were a little different and we're all still figuring out how all these pieces of the stack ought to operate. And so what we do at Hidden Door is say like, cool, we're going to align these layers. 30% of all of our revenue, which is a subscription base for the product, you can also play for free. But if you want like all the cool stuff, you can pay, goes in a pool, and then we share that out with everyone who creates worlds. And by the way, we have a self-service world creation tool. So in as little as 5 minutes, you can have a world. We can make an empanadas with founders world, where we can come in and maybe, you'll make up a fictional host, but we can eat empanadas and like some drama will
Banana
happen.
barbarian.
Yeah, if you like. And then, it's aligning that business model. So being very clear on where the money goes, where it comes from, that when you subscribe, you can feel good because it's supporting the people who actually wrote the creative work you're experiencing. And then it flows through the product in a way that makes sense. And it's all aligned around those same principles. And I should say we don't use any OpenAI models under the hood of it. It's all things based on or open or things we built ourselves, because we're trying to, for one, create the world's best immersive story experience, and for another, align all of those principles.
Cool. My dream hidden door experience, I've just been thinking through this past, like, 10 minutes, is, Brandon Sanderson entering the Cosmere. I've been on a Brandon Sanderson kick ever since Apple TV announced their got licenses for his show,
Well,
so
let's tag him and maybe he will sign a license and we can create that specific world for you.
absolutely. Okay. This is the real purpose of this Empanada podcast.
Yes.
Is to live out my Cosmere fantasy. Awesome, Hilary. Um, I'm really curious also on just the go-to-market, motions for your company and kinda what it looks like to reaching out to these different authors and getting their buy-in. Any, like, funny stories or interesting, encounters to convince an author to come over?
It's really funny that I would say no, not in that sense. Like most authors like get that the appeal is to let the fans see more of the world they've already put the work into. And we're very clear that like our authors, even if you're just someone who like shows up, say you see this podcast and you're like, cool, I want to make a world, like you own all your IP. Like we never claim any of it. Our goal is that you have fans and those fans get more of what they love. And then maybe it, increases sales for the sequel to the first book or helps, justify a TV deal. Like that's really like we are all on our team people who read a lot and really and love TV and love movies. And like we're people for whom any media is like a big part of like identity and how we talk to our friends and things. And so like our goal is really that authors feel that. But in this current moment where AI is very much like Anthropic just sort of had this giant settlement to pay authors, in a settlement for the rights to use their books and not nearly enough, right? Um, it's a very, people hear like, oh, there's AI. And they're like, well, that's not for me. And that's fair too. But I think if folks really talk to us, they then kind of get what we're trying to accomplish and the means by which we're doing it. So I always say, like, oh, it's like artisanal Brooklyn machine learning, like the same mathematics, but hopefully applied in a somewhat more thoughtful way. And also, I'm going to say one more thing on that
Yeah.
because it is not easy to be in a market where your primary customers on both sides of the market are resistant to the technology. And again, we started this company well before anyone cared. When we were fundraising for Hidden Door, it was all NFTs all the time. And that was never us. We're like, no, thank you. Um, so it is really important to be clear on like why we're doing what we're doing, but also to try and show what good can look like. Because if we are ever going to end up in a place where the economics work out the way they should, in my opinion, somebody has, and many people hopefully like have to be trying to do it right. And I also have a strong belief that AI systems and LLMs certainly like all they do is aspirationally regress to the mean. Like the things that delight us about storytelling are not what an LLM is designed to do. And that is never, it's not a replacement by any means. It is a tool for essentially like translation at best. And therefore, I think in the end, when we play the long game, our approach is the right one.
Very well said, and, I think one of the most compelling aspects of your product is that ownership piece of not your work not training the models and it being its own enclosed, ecosystem. Very, very cool. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the early founding days. Walk me through kinda how you met your co-founder and what it was like launching, right before the pandemic.
That part was wild. So we actually met because my last startup, which was called Fast Forward Labs, which was an applied machine learning research product development company, was acquired by a company called Cloudera, which at the time was a public company as a data platform vendor. And my co-founder, Matt Brandwine, was one of the folks doing due diligence on my company. And then after they acquired us, they were like, oh, we're putting together a business unit. Hilary's the boss now. You work for her. So we always joke he like got what he paid for. But it turns out we work rather well together. And so Cloudera was a ton of fun, amazing colleagues, and then a lot of there's a big merger and a bunch of political stuff that didn't really affect us. But eventually, after moving on, we were like, okay, our very first independent research report at Fast Forward Labs was on natural language generation in 2014. It was an area I was still very into and convinced there was unexplored product surface area to figure out. And so we realized that uh, it was in entertainment, it was in storytelling, and we thought there was a really lovely opportunity to do that. And so here we are thinking now about, sort of like transmedia, which we can come back to because we started this company the week before the pandemic started. So it was also a real adventure in suddenly being forced to remote, hiring remote, fundraising remote, handling like life demands when all the schools shut down and volunteering to help our cities, at the time, sort of get through that crisis. And I'm in New York City, so it was not an easy time here. Um, but it was in some ways like the right moment to start working on something like this that is really imaginative and ultimately about connecting us with other people through the stories we love.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's time for a little empanada intermission.
Okay. I'm going to try this other one.
Yeah.
Um, so thank you again. It's not every day someone sends me lunch.
What's number two?
Queso.
Eso. Got it. Me gusta.
It's good.
Just take a step back a little bit from to before and when you were, at Fast Forward Labs and then eventually acquired by by Cloudera. Um, can you share anything about like the big tech company life and maybe what it taught you that you refuse to repeat now with a smaller team at Hidden Door?
Well, there's certainly something really fun about working first for a company so big people have heard of it, and two, um, in an organization big enough to have more going on than you can possibly keep in your own head, because there's always something exciting and surprising and something cool happening. Um, But there are also a lot of different cultural patterns between large public company and small startup that means that I would always choose the startup. And that's just my personality. But it is the difference between knowing what you're going to be when you grow up and living in a world where your job is to create a possibility space and then go after whichever ones sort of hit. It is the difference between understanding there is an organizational hierarchy for good reasons, but also, uh, you know, not really caring about that. It's the difference between having a job where your title really does define what you do and being at a startup where, sure, like everyone on our team has something they're amazing at, but it turns out people who are amazing at one thing are often amazing at many things. And we have software engineer, machine learning folks who do writing, and we have writers who, also fix code bugs, and we have folks on our marketing team who are doing content design. And it's really more fun, I think, at a start. I have such a strong bias, I can't answer this question fairly.
Same way. I've got kind of the manic entrepreneur mind, so it's tough for I've learned I don't make the best employee in a larger company, so it kind of forced me into
Yeah.
entrepreneurship. Very cool. Okay. I love that you mentioned that you've got a distributed team and, you started in the pandemic, so you had to hire globally. Walk me through kind of what it's like for you to recruit teams globally and especially like the game development space where maybe some of the talent is kind of resistant or skeptical towards AI.
Well, I will say that when we initially were hiring, there was no skepticism. Again, nobody cared. So we were always like the weird company at the events, and folks were like, oh, it's kind of cool. Like, okay, I can see the idea. How does that even work? And so it helped that we started long before there was a lot of hype, because I think the people who we were able to recruit were genuinely interested in the product and our community and audience, and not motivated by, like, I don't know, AI dollar sign or that kind of thing. But it really changes what you have to look for, because the skills of the job are basically table stakes. And then it is the ability to communicate, collaborate, think about complex systems, think about how one choice will impact other people's work when they are literally, a continent away. And you have to proactively write down and reach out to them, or have a call. And we were a video heavy startup. A lot of startups went like strongly async. We're strongly synchronous. And I think that is a requirement for creative work, or the kind we do, that crosses where like layers of the product have to be in alignment. Um, and it puts a really different kind of burden on communication and collaboration. And the last thing I'll say is, like, for a while, we were buying everyone a VR headset so we could play walkabout mini golf together as a social thing where you could be spatially in a space with someone, but not, actually travel. And then once the urgency of the pandemic eased up, we started doing physical meetups. So we actually get to meet everyone in person and be in the same space for a few days. And that goes so far to building trust and relationships and letting you focus on what matters. Um, yeah, it matters a lot.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in, doing those frequent in-person meetups, and then we have a virtual office at NeoWork, so we have
Oh,
teammates
that's
also
cool.
synchronously run into each other and kind of recreate the water cooler chat that they would in a regular office. How does your mainly synchronous setup look like for your company? Is it like co-working sessions together and Zoom calls, or what does that look like specifically?
Yeah, we keep a sort of daily, what we call our dilemmas. So, demos, dilemmas, and aspirationally donuts. Once in a while, an actual donut appears on somebody's screen. It's in line with the empanadas here. So, maybe you'll appreciate that. But that's just a daily, like, demo, if what you're working on or some new idea you have. Dilemmas are like problems you don't want to solve in isolation. Like, what are you thinking about? Like, what's hard about it? Can we talk it through? And then, yeah, we use it as our stand up. So it's more like, oh, I think I'm going to be working on these things today, but it turns out she needs help with something. So I'm going to go work on that instead. And we all sort of keep everything prioritized there. And we do that daily just to have a check in. And we have folks who span from Europe over to the West Coast. So it's at a time where we all overlap. So you at least get to see everyone's face, say hello. There is a human behind the screen once a day. And that's super important for us. I know some teams don't work that way, but for us, that is helpful. And we do open collab times, which are basically like, it's a video call. You might be eating lunch, you might have video off, but you're working, and then you can just sort of chit chat as you like. And at this point, too, we have a few folks in our Brooklyn space. So we have enough of a density of a center of gravity where all our meetings are still video, but we also have the ability to bring everyone here for those meetups. So it's nice to have a home that is always our home. Um, and where we can actually have some physical, like, books and shared books. We have a neon version of our narrator, who's like our company mascot. We host events here and things. So it's really nice to be part of our local community too.
Yeah, I know that's, some companies or founders, they see the synchronous work as maybe a little 1984 of, always having eyes on, but I've found the opposite to be true. Like, it really helps with connection, and, it's if it's just someone's Slack face, it's a lot more difficult to, like, understand the why behind their message and, like, what's the real context they're going for.
Yeah, I think if I were starting today, I would probably start in person. And that is an admission. Like, one is not necessarily better than the other, but for those, like, let's just take a walk and talk about it kinds of problems, for the way you can whiteboard in space, like, it's nice to be in the same place. So we try to make that happen.
Awesome. So, Hilary, you described in your first interview, you described Hidden Door as storytelling for kids and families back in 2020. And now you're, dealing with more adult and, mature books and topics, for more grown-up fans. So what happened in between, and walk me through that pivot?
Yeah, that's it. It's been a funny one. We were playtesting in the pandemic some early prototypes, and we were playtesting with middle school kids. They're so much fun. And their parents would, like, of course, lurk in the background. So these were like, kids from community groups or friends' kids, or like, there were, like, of course, if I had a kid on a call with a stranger, like, I would lurk in the background too. But once the kids were done, the parents would be like, "Oh, can I have a turn? Can I play this? Can I do this?" And we realized that actually the storytelling appeal is much greater than just for kids. And because we designed our narrative engine around safety and controllability, we also pivoted to work with authors and creators because we have the ability to control the way a player experiences their world. Safety, controllability are the same technology. And so it was a little bit of a pivot across the board. We still have all ages worlds on the platform. Like, you can go play a very, all audiences Wizard of Oz. You can sort worlds by their sort of like rating for content, and even more depth than that. It's not that we don't do that anymore, but our main customer now is actually 20 to 35, more women than men, lots of queer or folks who, explore identity through storytelling. We let you be whoever you want to be and, sort of tell your stories how you want to tell them. Um, and yes, mature content, but the kind of mature content you'd see in a romance novel. And like our guidepost is really like, would I recommend this to a friend? Is this something I would talk about? Because we're very interested in building up pro-social like experiences and like a social community around the stories. We're not interested in the kind of content you would read that's really, really private, if you know what I mean. So while there is sort of mature content, you can think of it as being like R-rated content, um, and a lot of focus on character consistency and believability and truth to the original IP or the vision of that original author.
Love that, and I'm curious what the maybe QA layer looks like, or, like, content moderation to make sure it sticks to
Oh, we
those
have
those
so
filters.
much. Well, so first, our architecture is a little bit different than what most people would assume. They sort of think like, okay, so it's like a, OpenAI API call and then like text in, text out. We don't do that at all. So our system is text in. We have a whole bunch of different tasks that run, many of which are little models that we run, um, that then use our handwritten content. We have writers on our team who actually write out like, what are the beats of a good heist? What does a good podcast episode look like? I don't know if we actually have that handwritten, but it's the kind of thing. We have a business meeting, we have a VC pitch, um, and we pull that handwritten content in, sort of like the trope of it. And then we take the rules of the world, and then all of it gets mapped to essentially a game engine data structure. And we use that data structure to generate the text and the art you see, which is also handmade. So it's a very different set of problems to solve. And we do use LLMs for sort of rendering the text in the style of the world. That's a translation problem. Our system won't output something that isn't in the content beats that it's been given. So we have a lot of confidence that it is going to follow the rating it's given and the kind of story. But players can try anything. And believe me, players try everything. And like, I worked on a social media company for a while. Like, I have seen things. I have learned new things about humanity through working on this system, and that's fine because the system handles it gracefully. And yes, we do a lot of sort of like word checking as well. We have a database of tens of thousands of words and phrases with metadata attached that we use to make our simulations more accurate. But it's also a tool for saying like, oh no, that word should never show up in an all ages world. And so you'll notice that if you go type something with language that's not appropriate into a hidden door game, it will reframe it for you in the PG-13 that's appropriate for that world. still the same idea underneath, but like reframed in a way that's acceptable. And then you accept it and go. And here's a funny story. That reframing layer also led to us having a bunch of growth from players who play in languages other than English because they get essentially, they can type in their native language or a mix of languages or emoji, whatever they're feeling, and they get that translation into a safe set of language the system understands, and then they can submit it. So there's an unexpected feature we got out of doing this raid. Um, and it's not like we've done anything that's magic. Like we have a Postgres database that we've put the work into to screen all that input and make sure that it's going into the system. The system itself only works with what we've given it. And then what comes out is going to be, you can poke it and push it in different ways. And you can, if you're in a mature world and it's a romance world, like you can get some really nice, steamy, like lovemaking scenes. It's not like it won't do it, or some great murders, which is also really hard to do with LLMs alone, by the way. They will not want to kill you. But I think we handle all of that really well.
Very cool. Are there maybe settings you can adjust if you're just playing with friends internally of being able to up the steaminess if everyone kind of consents to it, or what's the level of flexibility?
You can create a world, make it mature, put in a lot of, whatever you want the tropes to be, and you write them yourself. So you can kind of do anything you want there. And then when you publish it, we will only publish it publicly if it meets our content settings, but you can share it with your friends.
Is that like a human in the loop layer that reviews the content settings, or is it fully automated? What does that look like?
For our publication review, it is both. So we do an automated check on a whole bunch of features. And then if there are any questions at all about it or use of language, then it goes to a human to review. And mostly it goes to a human to look at because we want to make sure the feedback we're sending back to our creators is useful and correctly actionable. And sometimes, of course, LLMs are dumb. So we always have a person look at it before we would send something back. And I mean that in the sense that a lot of our creators are actually fanfic writers or, writers who are drawing on genre tropes. And that's exactly what our system is great for. So some of it is, we will flag if something looks like a inappropriate content or gratuitous use of a copyrighted character, but it might be okay depending. So it's good to have someone look at it, and we want that to feel really good for creators too. Like they should always understand why a decision was made and have a person to talk to. So we also have an email they can write to that goes to our whole team. So someone will see it and get back to them fairly quickly. So we're trying to be like real humans behind the screen.
Makes sense. Awesome, Hilary. And I'm more just curious for myself. Were most of your customers like coming in with friends they already know and joining a group together, or are they meeting people kind of online through Hidden Door to go through these adventures together?
I would say it's a mix of both. Like sometimes people come in because they're a fan of the work, or we have some creators who, sort of share with their fans, and then the fans sort of share things and find each other. And then other times it's really like a lot of the sharing off our social share features actually goes into messages or WhatsApp groups, or like it's the group chat. And folks come through that. So it's really a mix. It's like, again, we want to be a place where you're making those moments of story that you want to share with your friends. And so it's that kind of energy, whether your friends are people who like the same book you like, or your friends are like your friends in the group chat.
This is a question I like to ask all the founders that come on the podcast. You've already given some good hot takes, but what's one strongly held belief that you have that you think 99% of other founders would disagree with?
The hardest part of AI product design is not tokens and it's not GPUs. Those are commodities. The hardest part is building an experience in a community that is sticky and meaningful and actually solves people's real problem accurately and well.
Well said.
That'll be my hot take for today.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you said you're an avid reader. Any books you're reading right now that you recommend like founder listeners should check out?
I have a lot. Do you want like fiction or nonfiction? Like,
Most people give nonfiction, so let's go with fiction this time.
Okay, I just finished a book called Hench, by Natalie Walshatz, and it is a story of a data scientist who is like a hench person for a supervillain, and it is so good. And I think maybe it applies in both ways. It's fiction, but it's also kind of startup energy. You should go read this book.
Awesome. I love it. Really, well, where can people find out more about you and about Hidden Door online?
Yeah, hiddendoor.co. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on my website, hillarymason.com, on Blue Sky, hmason, or hillarymason.com. And come play, like, come build worlds, make them awesome.
Heck yeah. I'm already thinking through my empanada tentacle monster as we talk.
Awesome.
All right. Well, Hillary, thanks so much for coming on again. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.